The jungle was thick with shadows, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth. Ethan Voss crouched behind a fallen tree, gripping his rifle tightly. His uniform was torn, his body covered in dirt and dried blood. He had been on this alien planet for weeks, cut off from his squad, surviving on whatever he could find. The war between humans and the Xilari had turned this once beautiful world into a battlefield. He exhaled slowly, listening. The night was quiet, too quiet. Something was out there. Then he saw her. A figure stumbled through the trees, silver skin glowing faintly under the twin moons. An alien, a Xilari. She clutched her side, her dark blue blood staining the fabric of her suit. She was injured, weak. She didn't see him at first, moving unsteadily, as if running from something. Ethan raised his rifle. His orders were clear: eliminate all enemy combatants. But as he watched her, he hesitated. She looked afraid. The Xilari weren't supposed to show fear. They were warriors, just like humans. Yet this one looked different. Her wide violet eyes darted around, searching for danger. Her breathing was ragged, her body swaying. She was on the verge of collapse. Ethan's grip tightened. He should pull the trigger. That was the rule. That was survival. But then she turned and locked eyes with him. For a moment, neither of them moved. The silence between them was thick, filled with something unspoken. The fear in her eyes wasn't just from him. It was from whatever she had been running from. She took a shaky step back, pressing a hand against her wound. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She was too weak to speak, too weak to fight. Ethan cursed under his breath. This was a bad idea, a terrible idea. Slowly, he lowered his rifle. The alien's eyes widened in shock. She didn't expect mercy. Ethan reached into his small pack and pulled out a water canteen. He rolled it toward her. She flinched at first, as if expecting a trick. But when nothing happened, she hesitantly picked it up. She sniffed it, then took a cautious sip. Ethan exhaled. He had just made a decision that could get him killed. A distant sound echoed through the jungle. Deep, metallic footsteps. Ethan's head snapped toward the noise. Damn it. Someone was coming. The alien woman's expression changed instantly. Panic. She pointed toward the trees behind her, then at him. Go, she rasped in a broken, accented voice. Ethan frowned. Was she warning him? The footsteps were getting closer. Heavy. Purposeful. Not human. Ethan made a choice. He grabbed his rifle, gave the alien woman one last glance, and disappeared into the jungle. As he ran, he heard the sound of something big stepping into the clearing where she had stood. A low, mechanical growl followed. Then silence. Ethan didn't stop running. He didn't know why he had let her go. Maybe it was the look in her eyes. Maybe it was the fear in her voice. Or maybe, deep down, he knew this war was more complicated than anyone wanted to admit. One thing was certain. He had just made an enemy of someone. And he wasn't sure if he would live to regret it. Ethan Voss sat near his small fire, staring at the flickering flames. His body was tired, his mind restless. It had been 3 days since he let the alien woman go. 3 days of waiting, watching, and wondering if he had made a mistake. He had expected an attack by now. Maybe the Xilari would come looking for him, furious that he had spared one of their own. Maybe his own people would brand him a traitor if they ever found out. But nothing happened. Instead, something strange had begun. At first, it was small things. He would wake up to find the area around his shelter oddly disturbed. Branches moved, leaves arranged in strange patterns. Once, he discovered a small pile of blue fruit near his camp, the kind he had seen growing deep in the jungle. He hadn't put them there. Someone was watching him. He kept his rifle close, his senses sharp. Was it the alien woman, or was it something else? One evening, as the twin moons rose above the trees, he heard a sound, a soft rustling, like footsteps on damp earth. Ethan's heart pounded. He gripped his weapon and waited. Then, from the shadows, she stepped forward. The alien woman. Ethan tensed, his finger hovering over the trigger. She didn't look like a threat, but that didn't mean she wasn't dangerous. She held something in her hands, a small, glowing object, pulsing with faint golden light. She extended it toward him. A gift. Ethan hesitated, eyeing her carefully. "What is this?" he asked. She tilted her head, as if struggling to understand. "Gift," she said in her soft, accented voice. He frowned but took the object carefully. It was warm to the touch, smooth like polished stone, but humming with energy. He had never seen anything like it before. The alien woman took a step back, watching his reaction. "Why?" he asked. She pointed to herself, then to him. "Debt." Ethan narrowed his eyes. "Debt." She nodded. "You? Help. I help." He studied her for a moment. Her wound was healing, but she still looked weak. He had saved her life, and now she was repaying him. But why? The Xelari weren't known for kindness toward humans. Before he could ask more, she suddenly stiffened, her eyes darting toward the trees. Ethan heard it a second later. A deep, distant rumble. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't an animal. It was something mechanical. The alien woman's expression changed. Fear, urgency. She turned back to him and pointed toward the jungle. "Run." Ethan's blood ran cold. "What's coming?" he demanded. She shook her head, frustration on her face as she struggled for words. "Bad. Hunter. Hunter." Ethan had faced Xelari soldiers before, but this sounded different. Then, in the distance, a heavy metallic thud echoed through the night. Something big was out there, and it was getting closer. Ethan looked at the glowing object in his hand. Was this why she had come? Was this thing the reason she had been running? The alien woman turned, disappearing into the jungle. But before she vanished completely, she paused and looked back at him. For a moment, he considered staying, fighting. Then another heavy thud came, closer this time. Ethan didn't need to be told twice. He grabbed his gear, stuffed the glowing object into his pack, and ran. The hunt had begun. Ethan ran. The jungle was thick, the ground uneven, but he pushed forward, dodging low-hanging branches and leaping over roots. Behind him, the heavy thud-thud-thud of something massive echoed through the night. It was getting closer. His heart pounded as he stole a glance over his shoulder. He couldn't see it yet, but he felt it. Something powerful, something dangerous, was tracking them. Ahead, the alien woman, Soraya, moved swiftly despite her injuries. She didn't look back, only forward, as if she knew exactly where she was going. Ethan had no choice but to follow. Then, without warning, she stopped. Ethan nearly crashed into her. "What are you?" She raised a hand, silencing him. Her violet eyes scanned the trees, listening. The jungle was eerily silent now. No insects, no night creatures. Something was watching them. A deep mechanical growl rolled through the darkness. Ethan's grip tightened on his rifle. He shifted slightly, trying to get a better view, but Soraya grabbed his arm and shook her head. "Do not shoot," she whispered. Ethan frowned. "Do not shoot." He didn't like that plan. A shadow moved between the trees. Then another. A towering figure, almost twice Ethan's height, emerged from the darkness. It wasn't an auxiliary soldier. It was something worse. The creature had an armored metallic body, its form sleek yet brutal, built for war. Its glowing red eyes locked onto them, and Ethan knew this was the hunter she had warned him about. Slowly, the machine raised one massive arm. A plasma cannon hummed to life, charging up. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to move, but before he could react, Soraya stepped in front of him. She raised both hands, palms facing outward. "No," she called out, her voice firm. The machine hesitated. Ethan's pulse raced. Why had it stopped? Why hadn't it fired yet? Soraya slowly reached into her cloak and pulled out something, another object, similar to the one she had given him, but bigger. It pulsed with the same golden light, and as soon as the machine saw it, its red eyes flickered. It recognized the object. Soraya spoke in her own language, her voice calm but commanding. The machine stood still, as if considering. Then, just as suddenly, it let out a sharp metallic screech and raised its cannon again. Soraya grabbed Ethan's wrist. Run. Now. This time, he didn't argue. They bolted through the jungle as the machine roared behind them. A blast of energy tore through the trees, scorching the ground where they had stood moments ago. Bark and debris exploded in all directions, but they kept running. Ethan risked a glance at Soraya as they moved. What was that thing? She didn't answer at first, her face set in grim determination. Finally, she spoke. It was not Scifi. Ethan's stomach tightened. Then what the hell was it? She hesitated, as if choosing her words carefully. It is old. Ethan didn't like the sound of that. Old. She nodded. Hunters. Not ours. Not yours. They sleep, then wake, when the time is right. She looked at him, her gaze intense. They want the gift. Ethan reached into his pack, pulling out the glowing object she had given him earlier. This. What is it? She exhaled, glancing over her shoulder. The hunter wasn't in sight anymore, but it was out there, searching. The key, she said. Ethan frowned. A key to what? Soraya looked at him, her eyes filled with something he couldn't quite place. Fear, hope, maybe both. To war, she whispered. Ethan didn't have time to ask more questions. Another blast shook the jungle, lighting up the night. The hunter wasn't done hunting. And now, Ethan knew, this war was much bigger than humans and Scifi. Something ancient had just awakened, and it wanted its key back. Ethan's lungs burned as he ran, his boots pounding against the damp jungle floor. The air was thick with humidity, but the cold grip of fear kept him moving. Behind him, the hunter crashed through the trees, relentless, unstoppable. Every few seconds, a blast of searing energy ripped through the jungle, lighting up the night with fire and destruction. The creature wasn't just chasing them, it was trying to erase them. Soraya ran ahead, her movements swift despite her injuries. She knew this terrain better than he did, weaving through thick foliage with practiced ease. Ethan pushed himself harder to keep up. Another blast struck the ground nearby, sending a shockwave of heat and debris flying. Ethan stumbled but kept moving. He had been in tough situations before, but this was different. This wasn't a normal enemy. This was a predator, a machine built to hunt. Where are we going? He shouted between breaths. Soraya didn't look back. Safe place. Almost there. Ethan didn't know what she meant, but at this point, he didn't care. Anything was better than dying out here. The ground beneath them sloped downward, leading to a rocky outcrop. At the base was a narrow crevice between two massive stone formations. Without hesitation, Soraya slipped inside. Ethan followed, squeezing through the gap. The space was barely wide enough for them to fit. The rocks were cool, pressing against his arms as he forced his way in. Then, boom! A massive explosion rocked the jungle behind them. The hunter had reached the edge of the outcrop. Ethan could hear the mechanical whir of its sensors scanning the area. He held his breath. For a few tense seconds, there was only silence. Then, slowly, the hunter moved away. Its heavy footsteps faded into the distance. Ethan exhaled, finally allowing himself to breathe. "Did we lose it?" he whispered. Soraya didn't answer right away. Instead, she pressed a hand against the stone wall and whispered something in her language. A faint hum filled the air. Before Ethan's eyes, the rock shifted. The entrance behind them sealed, blending perfectly into the surrounding stone. Ethan took a step back. What the hell? Soraya turned to him. Safe now. Ethan ran a hand through his damp hair, still catching his breath. His body ached, his mind racing. Okay, mind telling me where we are. Soraya gestured deeper into the cave. Old place. Not mine. Not yours. Ethan frowned but followed her further inside. The tunnel opened into a large chamber, dimly lit by the same golden energy that pulsed from the object in his pack. The walls were covered in strange carvings, ancient symbols that Ethan couldn't read. At the center of the room stood a stone pedestal. Embedded in it was another glowing artifact, similar to the one Soraya had given him, but larger. Ethan stepped closer, studying the structure. This is some kind of technology, isn't it? Soraya nodded. Very old. Before Xilari. Before humans. Ethan exhaled. So we're dealing with something bigger than just our war. She met his gaze. Yes. Ethan looked down at the object in his pack, then at the one in the pedestal. He wasn't a scientist, but even he could tell these things were connected. Then, a chilling realization hit him. The hunter hadn't been trying to kill them just because they were running. It had been trying to stop them from getting here. Ethan turned to Soraya. You knew about this place all along, didn't you? She hesitated, then nodded. Ethan clenched his jaw. Why bring me here? Why give me the key? Soraya stepped closer. Because you are different. Ethan scoffed. Different how? She placed a hand on the glowing pedestal. Only humans can use it. Ethan's breath caught. What? Soraya nodded. This is why war started. Your people do not know, but the ones in power, they do. Ethan felt his stomach twist. His people, the humans, already knew about this, and they had kept it a secret. Before he could ask more, a loud, distant boom shook the cavern walls. The hunter was still out there, and it was coming back. Soraya's expression hardened. No more running. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle, looking at the artifact one last time. He had a feeling his choices were about to change everything. Ethan stood in the dimly lit chamber, his heart pounding. The glowing artifact pulsed softly within the stone pedestal, casting golden light over the ancient carvings on the walls. He could still hear the distant thud-thud-thud of the hunter searching outside. He turned to Soraya. What do you mean only humans can use this? She hesitated, then exhaled. This place, it was not made by my people, not by yours. She pointed to the symbols on the walls. Long ago, there were others. They built many things. They left behind weapons, knowledge. And this. Ethan frowned. And this key you gave me, it's connected to this place. Soraya nodded. It activates the old power. Ethan glanced back at the pedestal. And why can only humans use it? Soraya hesitated again, as if choosing her words carefully. Because your kind was meant to. Ethan's breath caught. That doesn't make any sense. Soraya looked at him with deep violet eyes. The ones who came before. They left behind their legacy. But they did not leave it for my people. They left it for yours. Ethan took a step back, trying to process her words. If what she was saying was true, then humanity wasn't just another species fighting for survival in the galaxy. They were something more. And someone, maybe the Xilari, maybe something even older, had been trying to keep them from learning the truth. The ground trembled. A loud metallic boom echoed through the cavern. The hunter had found them. Soraya's expression darkened. It knows. Ethan gritted his teeth. Then we better make this count. He looked at the glowing artifact in his hands. If this was a key, then it had to unlock something. He glanced at the pedestal. There was a slot, a perfect fit for the object he carried. His gut told him that once he placed it inside, there was no turning back. Another boom. The hunter was almost here. Ethan met Soraya's gaze. You sure about this? She gave a single nod. Ethan inhaled sharply and placed the artifact into the pedestal. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a deep hum filled the air. The walls lit up, golden energy flowing through the ancient carvings like veins of fire. The pedestal trembled, and suddenly, light shot upward, forming a pillar of energy that reached toward the cavern ceiling. Outside, the hunter let out a metallic screech. It knew something had changed. The cavern walls shook violently. Dust and debris rained from above. Ethan stumbled backward, shielding his face. The entire structure was awakening. Soraya grabbed his arm. "Look!" Ethan turned, and his breath caught. The pedestal was transforming. The stone cracked apart, revealing a hidden structure beneath. It wasn't just a keyhole. It was a control center. Symbols flickered across the walls like ancient computer screens. A holographic display appeared in the air. Maps, star charts, and something else. Something that looked like a countdown. Ethan's stomach dropped. What did we just activate? Soraya's voice was calm but firm. The truth. A deep mechanical roar erupted from the cavern entrance. The hunter was here. Ethan grabbed his rifle. Whatever happened next, he was ready to fight. And for the first time, he knew exactly what he was fighting for. The cavern trembled. The golden energy from the pedestal pulsed through the walls, filling the ancient chamber with light. Ethan felt the power in the air, tingling against his skin. But there was no time to wonder. The hunter had arrived. The massive machine stood at the entrance, its glowing red eyes locked onto them. It let out a deep metallic growl, the sound vibrating through the stone. Then, with terrifying speed, it raised its arm, its plasma cannon charging with deadly energy. Ethan acted on instinct. He grabbed Soraya's arm and pulled her behind the pedestal, just as a blast of blue fire exploded against the floor, sending debris flying. "Great, it's angry now," Ethan shouted. Soraya's eyes darted around the chamber. "We must hold it off." Ethan peeked from behind cover, gripping his rifle. He had fought many enemies before, but this thing was different. It wasn't just a killer, it was a relic from another time. A machine built for hunting. And it wasn't going to stop until they were dead. The hunter stepped forward, its massive legs crushing stone beneath its weight. Another plasma charge hummed to life, preparing to fire again. Ethan took a deep breath. No fear, no hesitation. He popped out of cover and squeezed the trigger. His rifle barked, sending a stream of high-impact rounds toward the machine's glowing eye. The bullets hit, but bounced off its armored body. The hunter didn't even flinch. Ethan cursed. Not good. The machine fired. A blast of energy obliterated the pedestal, sending Ethan and Soraya flying backward. Ethan hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. Dust filled the air, making it hard to see. He groaned, pushing himself up. Soraya. She was beside him, coughing but alive. "We must reach the controls." Ethan turned his gaze to the center of the room. The pedestal was destroyed, but the ancient system was still active. The golden energy flickered, symbols flashing across the walls. The control panel was open. Ethan's heart pounded. If they could activate whatever power was hidden here, they might have a chance. But the hunter wasn't going to let them. It stomped forward, raising its cannon again. This time, there was no cover left. Soraya's hand shot out. "Give me the key." Ethan hesitated for half a second, then yanked the glowing artifact from his pack and threw it to her. Soraya caught it and ran toward the control panel. The hunter lunged, its massive claw reaching for her. Ethan didn't think. He acted. He sprinted straight at the machine, firing wildly. His bullets didn't do much, but they got its attention. The hunter turned toward him, its red eyes flaring. "Yeah, that's right," Ethan yelled. "Come get me, you rusted piece of junk." The hunter roared and swung its massive arm. Ethan dodged at the last second. The claw slammed into the ground, leaving a crater where he had stood. Soraya reached the control panel. With shaking hands, she placed the key into the glowing slot. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a shockwave of golden light exploded from the walls. The hunter froze. Its red eyes flickered. Its body twitched, as if something had disrupted its system. The cavern shook violently. The ancient symbols on the walls shifted, forming new patterns. The golden energy spread, crawling up the walls like veins of fire. Ethan stumbled back. What is happening? Soraya pressed her hand against the control panel, her expression tense. The awakening has begun. The hunter let out a distorted mechanical scream. Its body convulsed, sparks flying from its joints. The golden energy had infected it, shutting down its systems. It tried to step forward, but its body locked up, frozen in place. Then, with a final pain screech, it collapsed. Ethan stared. The machine, the unstoppable hunter, was dead. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Soraya turned to him, breathing heavily. It worked. Ethan exhaled, his hands still shaking. What did we just do? She looked around the glowing chamber. We activated the past. Ethan swallowed hard. Whatever they had awakened, it was ancient and powerful, and it had chosen him. The ground rumbled again. But this time, it wasn't an attack. Something bigger was coming, and Ethan had a feeling their battle was far from over. The cavern trembled, golden energy pulsing through the ancient walls. The hunter's massive body lay motionless, its red eyes dimmed forever. But Ethan knew it wasn't over. Not yet. Soraya stood at the control panel, her violet eyes scanning the glowing symbols. The awakening is not complete. Ethan tightened his grip on his rifle. What does that mean? She turned to him. Something is waiting. It needs you. Before Ethan could respond, the chamber shifted. The golden light surged upward, forming patterns in the air, symbols, star maps, and strange shapes Ethan couldn't understand. Then, in the center of the room, something appeared. A holographic figure. It was tall, its form made of golden energy, its features blurred but undeniably humanoid. Its voice was deep, echoing in the chamber. You have awakened the vault. Ethan took a cautious step forward. Who are you? The figure's gaze seemed to focus on him. We are the architects. The first. The ones who came before. Ethan's breath caught. The architects. The lost civilization that had built this place. The ones who had left behind their technology, their knowledge, their legacy. And now, after thousands of years, they were speaking to him. You are human, the figure continued. You carry the blood of those we chose. Ethan frowned. Chose for what? The light around the figure pulsed. To continue our purpose, to protect what we left behind, to stand against the coming darkness. Soraya stepped beside Ethan. The Xilari always feared this. They knew humans were special. Ethan's mind raced. You're saying humanity was meant for something greater? The figure nodded. Yes, but they do not yet know their power. Ethan clenched his fists. Then tell me. Show me what we're meant to do. The figure lifted a hand. Suddenly, the chamber shifted again. The walls peeled away, revealing the night sky. Stars stretched across the darkness. But one thing stood out, a massive fleet, ships unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. And they were moving. Straight toward human space. The war you fight is only the beginning, the figure warned. The true enemy has yet to reveal itself. Ethan stared at the approaching fleet, his stomach twisting. This wasn't just about the Xilari. Something worse was coming. The figure turned to him one last time. The vault contains the knowledge you need. The power to stand against them. But you must choose, human. Ethan met Soraya's gaze. He had spent his life fighting. Fighting for survival. Fighting for his people. But now, he wasn't just fighting for humanity. He was fighting for the future of everything. He turned back to the hologram, his jaw set. I choose to fight. The figure nodded. The golden energy surged, and suddenly, Ethan felt it. A wave of knowledge, of power, of purpose flooded into him. The architects had left their secrets behind, and now, they were his. The light faded. The chamber returned to normal. The hologram was gone. But the knowledge remained. Ethan exhaled, his body shaking from the experience. Soraya stepped closer. "What did they show you?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes burning with new understanding. A way to win. Outside, the jungle was silent. The hunter was destroyed. The vault was open. And Ethan knew what had to come next. He and Soraya stepped out into the night, the stars above shining brighter than ever. This was not the end. This was just the beginning.